I was not looking forward to reading this book.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't.
No.
He was not.
Yeah.
It is everything he does not want to read.
Yes. Yeah. Our original intention was to do this book earlier in the podcast, but I kept dragging my feet on it because I'm like, I don't want to read that book. I do not want to read that book because I don't like historical fiction. I don't like romance, and it has love in the title, so it's got to be romance.
Welcome to the Bookish Introverts podcast. Join host Amazon bestselling author Brett Nelson and avid reader Melanie Dyer as they dive in to review books they've read, then chat with the amazing authors behind them. Quiet minds, big bookshelves. You don't want to miss it.
Hey everybody, it's Brett and Melanie, and we are back today with a great book talk. We're glad you're tuning in, and for those of you watching on YouTube, you're going to see once again we have something a little bit different going on today. Melanie and my's good friend Jessica is with us today. Jessica, say hi to everybody.
Hi everybody.
Now get
happy to be here.
Happy to be here. Okay, now get out so we can. No, I'm just kidding. And another thing different is that Melanie, my right arm, is not in the studio with me. And let me tell you, it has been crazy around here, hasn't it?
Yeah, Brett is lost without Melanie.
I know Jessica is thinking, dear Lord, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah, here I was expecting the red carpet to be rolled out when I came in.
And you came in to mayhem and chaos. So, and Melanie is not in the studio with us. She is at home in her living room. And so how is it doing the podcast from the opposite side of the studio?
Well, it's a little weird. I'm actually sitting at my dining room table, and our chairs are nice, but they're not the most comfortable in the world. So
okay. Okay.
But yeah, it's strange not being there. But
yeah,
if it was a way I could participate, then
as a podcast host, does it make you feel sort of disconnected from what's going on, not being in the same room, or does it still kind of feel the same?
No, you're still just as crazy.
Well, I am. I mean, some things never change.
She's here in spirit.
Jesus taxes and Brett's crazy. I mean, that's always going to be.
Sure.
So,
sure.
You know, you weren't here last week, and we had one of my author friends on, Lexi Nicholas. We talked about one of her books, and you weren't with us. So why don't we before we get into the podcast, I know you've mentioned to the listeners sort of the little medical situation. Do you want to give the listeners just a little bit of an update for our regular listeners to listen? They might want to be interested in what's going on with you.
Yeah, I can do that. They took me off my course of chemo because we had another spot pop up on my liver. So apparently what we were doing wasn't working. So she put me on all infusions, which has been super fun. I was just, for that podcast with your friend, I was just absolutely exhausted. It was not happening. It's a very aggressive, much more aggressive course. They give me a 3-hour infusion, and then I get to take one home with me for 2 days. So it's a lot, and I'm still I've been in and out of work this week. I managed to get there for one day. Jessica saw me one day this week.
Yes, she did.
Yes, I did. And then I worked from home some, but I really haven't done much in the last week. My infusion was pretty rough, and I get to do it all again this next Wednesday. So
this is going to be an every Wednesday thing for
every
how long?
2 weeks. Every 2 weeks.
Oh, every 2 weeks. Okay.
She didn't really give me a stopping point.
Okay.
She just said, we'll do this, and then we'll do more scans and see what's what. Yeah. So that's where we are.
All right.
Not the best news, but it could have been worse. It's a very small spot. She told us she wasn't super undone about it, but it was obvious we needed to switch courses. So
yeah. So she's pretty optimistic that the course of treatment will be.
I think she's really hoping this one works. If if it doesn't, then I think we'll get to do another ablation. So another hospital visit for me.
Okay, ablation. Is that what you were doing before?
It's well, for the liver, it's targeted radiation therapy on the liver.
Oh, okay.
Basically. And I've had one, but they're hoping this will take care of the other spots.
Okay.
And we won't have to do radiation.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, you got a lot of people praying for you. I can tell you that.
I do. And I appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah.
I feel very loved.
That's scary. I've never had a cancer diagnosis, so I can't imagine scarier words than that.
No. And Melanie is a warrior.
Yes, she is.
I haven't looked like one in the last. Not much of a warrior in the last week, but working on it.
Still are.
Yeah, for sure.
Trying. As you can see by my hair, I don't exactly look my best, but it's.
Well, I mean, but hey, at least you still have some hair. So that's better than
I do still have some hair.
Yeah.
Some.
Some being the operative word here, huh?
Not as much as I had, but some.
Yeah. Well, good. All right. Well, I'm glad to hear you're doing better. I just thought their listeners might want to kind of catch up on you.
Yeah, I'm glad I felt good enough to.
I am too.
Participate today.
Because I have to say, I'm a little bit nervous about this particular episode. I mean, I'm always just nervous in general about recording these podcast episodes, but I'm a little bit nervous about this one because we were supposed to record this like the first week of January.
Yeah.
And we just the first time we weren't able to because Melanie just wasn't feeling well, so we canceled or we postponed it till the following week. And then the following week we had 8 inches of snow fall, and so Southern people and snow is not a good mixture. Nope. So if we get 3 snow flurries, that closes the entire town down. And we got way more than 3 this time. So,
yeah, to be fair, we had some serious snow.
Yeah, it's the serious snow, which I love it. I love snow. I love a good snow day.
It was nice.
Yeah. Although I do have some beef against our employer because they didn't call a snow day. They made us work remote. So consider this my formal complaint. Not that
I feel like we could have had at least one snow day.
Say that again, Mel.
So I feel like we could have had at least one snow day.
Right?
Yeah. Would have been nice.
I get it, though.
It would have been nice to have just, hey, take the day off.
Okay.
Exactly. I kind of get why they didn't do it, though, because we work at a university, and so it probably, it was literally the snow days happened the last 2 days before school started. If the snow days had happened, after school had started, we probably would have gotten snow. They're usually really good about giving us snow days, but I'm still going to lodge a formal complaint because that's how I am. Whatever the male version of a Karen is, that's kind of what I.
I feel like there is a term for it, but I can't think of what it is.
Well, I think it's a Chad.
A Chad.
Is it?
Chad. I was about to say, I think it's Chad.
Yeah, which is hilarious because that's my brother's name. So. No, I'm really not.
The evil twin Chad.
I am. I'm the evil twin Chad. Yeah. So, okay, so we are discussing Karen King's, Francine Rivers' Redeeming Love. And Jessica, why don't you give us a quick bio on her? She's like uber famous, so most everyone's going to know her, but we still like to just, in case there's anyone listening, so tell us a little bit what you know about her.
Okay. Yeah, her name is Francine Rivers, and she wrote the book we're going to talk about, Redeeming Love, which I am in love with this book. And so I just briefly read her bio. Yeah. And she was talking about how she, probably for the first 30 years of her life, she lived for herself. Yes. And then they moved, her and her husband and family, they moved out of state, and a little boy came over when they were moving in and invited them to come to church with them. And they did. And so she ended up giving her heart to the Lord, and it just changed her life. She said her priorities changed once she became a Christian. And she said, because when she would write before, she would just lose herself in her writing. And really that became even more important than her own family. And so when she became a Christian, God kind of shifted her focus. So she would try to write and she couldn't. It's like she lost it.
Wow.
And
God has a way of putting a stop to things when you're putting focuses on things other than Him.
Yes. And so that it shifted her focus, absolutely, but it reprioritized just her life in general. And so she came to a place where she had to get to a place where she put God first, prioritized Him above writing, above even her own family.
And He gave her that talent, that gifting to be able to do that. So the least you can do is prioritize. And as an author myself, I can say that's easy to lose sight of. Sometimes you can get so involved in what you're writing that you do forget to keep things in priority. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they started doing this Bible study out of their home, and they were studying the book of Hosea, and that just really resonated with her. And she said, God kind of spoke to her and was like, this is the love story I want you to write.
Wow.
Yeah. And so then He gave her this story, this book to write, this new book to write, this new love story. And it's all about redemption, God's redemptive love, and how we can, even after we become a Christian, we can still choose other things and put other things before God. And like so many times in this book, it's just it's a reminder that, sometimes we have to reprioritize things in our own lives and put God back in His rightful place. And so, so that's.
Yeah. Well, and I found it interesting that she wrote non-Christian fiction earlier in her career. She didn't start out as Christian fiction. And from what I've heard, she wrote pretty steamy non-Christian fiction stuff. And then, of course, once she got saved, God did what He usually does. He cleans you up from the inside out. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. That
and you can tell.
Yeah.
She has written because she tiptoes to the very brink.
She does. Yes.
Of what would be acceptable.
Yeah. So it's real funny because, when we first started talking about this podcast, one of the very first things you said that Jessica said was, if you guys ever do Redeeming Love, I want to come on and talk about that book with you, because I guess that's one of your favorite books.
It is.
And Melanie hadn't read it, but I think it was on your list of books to read at some point. Is that right?
I had heard, strangely enough, I had seen, I'm a TikToker, so I had seen clips of the movie on TikTok. Which I will say right now, I just from the clips I've seen, I don't think the movie does the book justice. I think there's some watering down of a little bit of the message, not all of it, because it's impossible to tell without,
because it's a Hollywood movie,
which is a little disappointing because I believe Francine Rivers had input into the movie, but it was not made by a Christian production company or anything like that. So
have you seen
it was bound to get watered down.
Yes.
So how did you think the movie compared to the book? Like, were you satisfied with it? Disappointed with it?
All in all, I liked the movie.
Okay.
I do think they probably left the Christian aspect out of it. But it was still a good movie. I mean, you can't ever expect the movie to be as good as the book. It's just never going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's rare.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, in one of my books, it is still an option to be made into movie. An option doesn't mean it's going to happen. That means there's like a 98% chance that it might not. And that's one thing. I've got a well-known friend that is an actress in Hollywood, and she sort of has been helping me, like at the time, during the time frame that book potentially, they were trying to decide whether they were going to make it into a movie or not. They eventually decided not to at that point. But she told me, she said, I know you're a Christian fiction writer. Your book has a lot of heavy Christian content. She said, but just know they're probably going to scrub out all of the faith content or a big part of it because it's Hollywood.
Yeah.
You know, and
That's
so
Hollywood. That's what they do.
but I think when it comes to this redeeming, I haven't seen it, so I can't really. This would have been a perfect opportunity to put out a great Christian book, a Christian movie based off of a book, and have it high quality. You know, a lot of Christian movies are not high quality; they really aren't.
Wow.
So there are very few that are what I consider great high quality movies. I mean, so this would have been a great opportunity to push out a great Christian movie. So I'm kind of sad that they glossed over all that, and I get why they did because it was a secular, you know, movie production company. But
and you never know. I mean, someone else could come along and option it for a movie. Angel Studios could decide they want to make a, you know, kind of a Western. And, you know, I know what you mean about lower quality. Who are those brothers?
The Kendricks brothers.
The Kendrick brothers. You know, they started out and it was like, okay. But, you know, with each movie,
it got better.
It got better because they got more experienced and.
Well, and I think they're just, you know, there for a while back in the earlier days of Christian movies. I think there was a stigma that nobody watched them, you know, and I think with movies like The Sound of Freedom and some of the really popular Christian movies that have come out, I mean, people have showed out in droves to watch movies like that. So I think people like the Kendricks brothers and other production companies, they're realizing that not only is there a desire, you know, that there not only is there an audience out there for that type of movie, but you know, it's people want it.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, you know, when you have stuff like Sound of Freedom and you have things like The Chosen, and it shows there's a hunger, for clean.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't even have to be Christian, just clean.
Yeah.
Clean. Family friendly, because sometimes it's even hard to go to an animated movie these days and have it be kid friendly, completely kid friendly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, up to a certain age.
Yeah. Although that's been going on for years, you know, because I watch movies, you know, that my parents let us watch when we were younger. And now as an adult that you understand all that, you're like, I can't believe my parents let us watch that, you know, and it's hilarious the things that go over your head when you're young. And then,
definitely.
So I mean, that's
true. I mean,
but even cartoons. I mean,
I mean, I used to watch Night Court when I was a kid, and then found it on Prime, and I was watching. I was like,
yeah,
good grief! But it all went over my head when I was a kid. I just knew, you know, this is funny. This is funny. Oh, look, he does magic tricks. Isn't that hilarious?
The funny part kind of,
yeah. But the really clever,
what we were focused on.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah,
true.
You rewatch something you haven't watched in a long time, and you're like, "Oh my lord, I didn't realize it had that much language in it."
Well, and the funny thing, a lot of times our parents probably didn't even realize what was said in some of those movies and the innuendos, because the TV's kind of a babysitter.
Yes,
you know, like
so they weren't paying
go
attention
watch TV so I can get the dishes done, or so I can cook dinner, or you know. So.
Well, we were watching Top Gun the other day, and Chris looked at me. He's like, I don't remember that much cussing in this movie. I was like, nope, it's always been there. Always been there.
Yeah.
Never really noticed. Of course, we also grew up in the age of TBS and TNT, and they're showing movies and censoring. So sometimes the first time we see a movie might not be the whole movie.
Right. Yeah.
They'll, bleep stuff out and cut scenes and remind me to tell you my Police Academy story.
I haven't seen Police Academy in forever.
Because if you see it like made for television and they cut out a bunch of that stuff, they censor a bunch, and then you think,
they cut out a lot of Police Academy.
True.
And you see the uncensored version, you're like, oh my lord.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And it's 19-year-old Melanie going down to the rental store and renting Police Academy. That was an eye opener.
So is that not a podcast story?
Not really.
Moving on.
So Melanie, tell us, like, what did you think of the book? Like, just overall, like, what did you think?
I really enjoyed the book. I will say, before we get into too much detail on it, if anyone's watching this and they haven't read the book,
Yeah.
It could be, I hate the word trigger because I think it gets overused, but for anyone who is a survivor of any type of essay, we'll say that so YouTube doesn't block it. This could be a very difficult read and you might not get through it.
Yeah.
That is possible.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
And that's
that's all right.
We always want to be as sensitive as possible to
yes, you shouldn't force yourself. It was a heavy
because of the nature of the book. There may be some topics that come up that may be uncomfortable, but we'll keep it as pleasant as possible.
It was a heavy read. I haven't had to put a book down quite as much probably since I read one of yours, Brett.
What do you mean by putting
the Rain book?
You
want to be a little fall of rain, which is a song from Les Mis. That's not correct.
When Raindrops Fall.
When Raindrops Fall, yeah. That one took me a little bit to get through, and this was a heavy read because it deals with children. First of all, it deals with the results of being treated in that way. It's fantastically written. I mean, it's basically, it's kind of like it's the book of Hosea, but from his wife's point of view, with a little bit of him thrown in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, he's also a big part of it. Yeah.
It's looking at it from the other side, which is good.
Yeah, which is I thought it was a very interesting perspective.
It was an interesting take.
Yeah.
She can write. There's no doubt.
Francine Rivers is a premier writer. It is understandable why. I mean, I really think she's probably the most well-known Christian fiction writer. I mean, Karen Kingsbury's up there too, but I can see
she'd be up there with Karen Kingsbury, Janet Oakey. I think it's Oakey, might be Oak.
I wasn't sure if it was.
You never know.
Yeah,
I've always said
yeah.
I'm not sure. She's Canadian, so you never know.
Yeah.
No offense to Canadians.
And we do have quite a few Canadian listeners. And looking at our podcast statistics, we actually do have a lot of Canadian listeners. Okay. And believe it or not,
my favorite author is Canadian. So
say that again.
I'm not going to offend you.
Oh.
My favorite author is Canadian, so don't take offense.
Yeah. So overall, you're glad you read the book.
I am glad I read the book. It was beautifully written. I think it was sensitively written.
Yes.
She didn't back away from the truth. She didn't sugarcoat it.
Yeah, and she didn't hesitate to write about a tough subject.
Yeah, and she knew when to draw the curtain, so to speak.
Yeah, and sometimes that's a fine line.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and again, it's indicative of a fantastic writer because you have to know your audience, especially these days. Because I don't know, and maybe it's just me. I feel like readers are so much more sensitive today than they like. Do you like? I don't remember in the past ever hearing about people being so sensitive, and maybe it's just because back in the day, there was no way to leave reviews, and so there was no way for people to voice it. There was no social media, So anyway, but yeah, I just it takes a little bit of finesse to learn how to navigate the grittier parts of a book and get your point across without going too far.
Yeah, she towed the line.
Yeah,
she really did,
and I'm glad she did. I love grittier books, and when I say gritty, I'm not talking about dirty.
And there's no gory details.
No, there's no gory details. But I love grittier books with some meat to them.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like in Christian fiction, sometimes in Christian fiction, I feel like it's unicorns and puppy dogs, and
And life's
Yeah.
no, life's not like that. And there's a lot of people that say they like those kind of books because they read to escape, which I totally get. There's and I love unicorns and puppy dogs. Everybody's perfect. Everybody's because sometimes after reading a book like this, you need a lighter read.
right.
But I was a little bit. I was not looking forward to reading this book.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't.
No.
He was not.
Yeah.
It is everything he does not want to read.
Yes. And of course we're almost up on a year in this podcast, and our original intention was to do this book earlier in the podcast, earlier, like when we first started it.
Okay.
But I kept dragging my feet on it because I'm like, I don't want to read that book. I do not want to read that book because I don't like historical fiction. I don't like romance. And it has love in the title, so it's got to be romance. Although but I'm so glad I read it because I don't really consider it a romance.
I would say
No.
it's not the main point of it. It is about love, but not
the.
If you've been in the church for very long, you learn about the different types of love. It's
Yes.
more about agape,
Yes.
not romantic love.
Yeah.
I mean, there is romantic love. Michael loves Angel.
Yes. He had a romantic love for her.
Yes, and she, spoiler, eventually.
Did.
It is about, really, it's kind of about all the different types of love because, there's eros, there's agape, there's, I only remember the good kinds.
Yeah.
I mean, there's friendship.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the type of love that's a selfish love, which is mostly what Angel experienced her,
Yes.
entire life, aside from her mother.
Yeah. When you do that kind of work, that's the kind of love that you're opening yourself up to, that selfish, satisfying myself kind of love.
She was only worth what she could give someone.
Yeah. And that was what was so hard to read about it for me because she was in anguish. She didn't like the life she was living, but she felt like she was stuck in the life she was living.
Yes.
And one thing in the reviews that I noticed after I read the book, I like to go in and kind of read the reviews just to see what other people's thoughts of it are. And in our modern vernacular, she was a sex worker, and a lot of the people, and again, I think a lot of the people that left bad reviews on the book, I think it was non-Christians who got hold of the book, and one of a lot of the complaints that I saw was that people were offended that sex workers that she wrote about them in a negative light because that's a job, that's a valid job, and how dare anyone invalidate sex workers? I mean, that's such an odd, bizarre way of thinking about it, and even
like that's your complaint.
Exactly, because they didn't glorify that career choice, and
Here's
the
thing.
just bizarre.
And I know that there are women out there that are like this now, that are in the same boat. I'm shaking my table. But, and this never makes me so mad. If you're going to read something or watch something that is set in a time period different from yours, you have to put yourself in that mindset because I know there are women now who do this. They like what they do. They make good money doing what they do, and it's their decision, and whatever, women forever. Yeah. But this was not, and I'm sure there were probably women back then who liked what they did, but there weren't a lot of choices for women back then. You married, you were a teacher, you were a shopkeep, maybe a waitress, you know, but especially if you were starting out from the age Angel was starting out, which I'd like to think not all of them did, but a lot of them did start pretty young, at least, 14, 15.
Yeah.
No other way out because you married within your social class.
Mm-hmm.
No, Harvard graduate was going to see a washed girl out on the street and go, she's beautiful, I must have her.
Yeah.
No, that was, I imagine there was marrying between the classes, but it was very frowned upon.
And that is such a God thing to do. Like God, as Christians, we all know sometimes God asks you to do absurd things. From our limited perspective on things, some of the things that he asks us to do is so absurd. And when you read in Hosea that God told Hosea, I want you to go marry this promiscuous woman. That is like, if Jesus told me to go across town and marry that promiscuous woman, I would be like, girl, do you know what you're asking? You know what I'm saying? That's just
it's like, I didn't hear you.
You must be joking.
Exactly. I think
must be joking.
Whispered in my ear. Yeah.
Well, I think
if you're going to pick up a book,
too.
Yeah.
Say that, Melanie.
It's just if you're going to pick up a book or a film or a TV show, and why don't they just do this? Because they couldn't do that.
Yeah.
A lot of these women were women with no choice.
Right.
Yeah.
And
those people owned them. I mean, they couldn't get out if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're not talking about call girls with half of Washington, D.C. on their cell phones. This was,
I mean, they were
girls
to, whoever owned them.
Yeah. And that's very insulting, especially to women these days. I mean, and and in general, it's insulting to consider someone as your property. But back in the day, that was normalized. And so you kind of have to reflect that when you're writing in that time history. Yeah. And I think a lot of readers have a hard time separating, yes, this is inappropriate, but it's also how things were done in the time period that they're writing about. You have to take that into consideration. And I think a lot of readers these days have a hard time keeping things, thinking about things in that, okay, I don't like this, but it's the time period I'm reading.
Yeah. I mean, even though people try, you can't change history.
No. And we live in a day and era time when
history is done. It's finished.
I mean, that's what it was.
It's a done deal.
Yeah. But but what they say is true. If you change history, how are you ever going to learn from your mistakes, from the past? And I understand our country is not perfect. There's still a lot of things that we can all do differently, but we're a lot better than we were back in the day. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So
in some ways,
yeah, in some ways. So, so I wasn't terribly excited to read this book, but I'm so glad we finally got around to it because I really did enjoy it.
Good. I'm glad you did.
Yeah. So, Melanie, why don't you take us into the book? Let kind of talk about how the story started, and then we'll kind of take it from there.
Well, we start out. She's about 8 years old, Angel.
Yeah.
Who is being called Sarah at the time. Her name's Sarah, which holds a little significance later, but neither here nor there. Yeah. She lives with her mother, and who I'm guessing is a servant of sorts. I don't believe she was. Well, it was after the Civil War, so definitely not a slave, just a maidservant.
And for readers listening who haven't read this, it's based off of the book of Hosea back in the Old Testament, but it was written during the time of the California Gold Rush. So it's not really biblical fiction, but it's sort of a modern day retelling.
Yeah.
But written during the time of the
1860s.
I wrote it down here somewhere. 1835.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
was it 1835?
1835.
Wow, that far back.
Yeah.
She could have been a slave. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Well, no, she said something about getting paid. So
yeah.
No. But we know there's, that Sarah and, she loves her mother and her mother loves her and they seem to have a good relationship. But She never gets to see her father. Her father comes in for visits, and you get clued in pretty quick that this isn't a normal relationship.
Yeah.
She basically gets rejected by her father, which was heartbreaking to read, because the little kid, they don't understand.
Yeah.
And then the father, who has been keeping Sarah's mother, whose name was it May, I believe?
Yeah.
I think her name was May. Just decides it's too much for him. He's, she's putting too much pressure on him. He didn't want this kid in the first place, and now she wants him to play Papa for 5 minutes, and it's all too much. So he takes off, and she sends, I never was real certain. I think she was hoping he would come back if she sent Sarah away, because she sent Sarah away with the maidservant, and that was
an
crazy
experience in and of itself.
Yeah.
For Sarah.
Poor kid sitting outside in the hallway. And that's really when she gets her first lesson, because the servant tells her, men do not love you. They will use you for what they can, and that's the end of it. There's no such thing as a
like
good
that probably stick with you as a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the worst things people say to you are always the things you remember, not the good things, but the bad things.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
pretty much everything that Sarah experienced after that, it held true.
Yeah.
It held true. Yeah.
Sad
Yeah.
to
So
say.
she not only had those words of advice, she had life experience to back that up.
Confirmed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they go back to her mother's house, and that's when you find out he's just completely broken everything off. So no house, they have to move, the servant's gone, and her mother winds up in a shack by the sea doing what she can.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they were near where they lived to begin with. I don't know if they were in the same city. I'm not sure.
It seems that they maybe moved, at least.
I mean, that's
away from where she was originally, the little car, whatever that she, she was a cat woman, basically. She was his mistress. He had a family.
Yeah.
He had a wife that weren't.
Yeah, he had a wife and kids.
And May. Yeah.
You're mine when I can get away from the real family.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think
you're mine when I want.
They had until she got pregnant with Sarah. And, of course, he wanted her to abort Sarah, and she wouldn't do it. And
incredibly dangerous back then.
And so then, and Sarah could overhear these conversations, and she's blaming herself for coming. She's like, it's my fault. Like, if I was never born, my mom would be happy.
Yes.
Because he would still be happy with her. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot to put on it. I mean, I think maybe she was like 5 or 6 at that point, like a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. Like, that's a lot to put on a little kid. Like, I wish you were never born, and this is all your fault. I'm not happy.
Yeah.
And I think her mother loved her, but I think
she
loved that man more than she loved Sarah.
Yeah. He was her whole life.
Come and go.
Exactly.
He was her whole life. She built her whole life around him.
Yeah.
Which isn't good. You don't do that. I mean, even in a marriage, to build your whole life around another person isn't always going to get you the best outcome. If you're not both focused on God, then trouble can come along.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't put your spouse first. It's not what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I mean, you're
not putting this very well.
But that can't be your savior, so to speak. It can't be your all in all. That can't be
your whole.
Yeah. Because they'll disappoint you if you put that much hope and faith in a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was about to say, Jessica knows what I'm saying. She understands. She understands. But yeah, they wind up in a shack by the sea, and she winds up with kind of a guy, and does her best to make money when the money runs out. So Sarah, she goes outside to play while that goes on. And then, of course, she gets sick because she's both very unhappy, which can affect your health. And it's the 1800s. There's not a whole lot of health prevention for the poor.
Yes.
I think she was drinking a lot to numb the pain.
Which never helps anything.
And she probably ate very little, I'm sure.
Yes. So she eventually passes away. And her guy, who is, I don't, the way she wrote him, I don't think he necessarily had like Down syndrome, but he was slow.
Like maybe he was on the spectrum a little.
Not super bright.
Maybe, not super bright. And he thinks
a nice man all in all, like he tried to take care of
not, not the best of society. Obviously he's shacking up with a woman and
no one in their life was really in the best of society.
Yeah. But he treated her with, it's not like he beat her. He was treated her decent, and he played with Sarah and, all this stuff. Yeah. So he was basically a decent man, but he gets tricked. And winds up taking Sarah because he promised her mother he'd take care of her. And this guy tells him, I've got this other guy, and he wants to adopt a little girl because he saw a sucker. He knew a sucker when he saw one. And so he takes her to this fancy house, and she's immediately like, something ain't adding up. Even at her age, which I think at this point where she's at least 8.
I think she is.
I think it mentions something in there about her being 8 years old. So he takes her to this house because he thinks she's going to be this rich man's daughter, and she's going to have everything and won't maybe be happy that her daughter's being taken care of. And he winds up getting killed.
Yep.
Right in front of Sarah.
Yep.
Another traumatizing life for Sarah.
Traumatizing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she was there for exactly what you might think she was there for. The rich man wanted a little girl, but not as a daughter.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and the ending of that, it's split into parts, the book. There's chapters, and then there's also parts.
Yes.
And the ending of that part that was the first time I had to put the book down because I literally had tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
It was well written. You knew what was happening. I think I texted Brett. I'm trying to find it right now. Let's see. Oh yeah. I'm on page 44 and this book is killing me.
Yeah.
And that was the end of the first part.
Yeah. And I have to say, there was a strike against the book from the very beginning for me.
What?
I hate a prologue more than anything. I absolutely hate prologues. More times than not, I do not read prologues. I just skip over them and go to the first chapter. Well, the very first section of the book is a prologue. And in the Kindle version, which is the prologue, was an hour and 35 minutes long.
Wow.
It's like 40 pages long.
I wondered why they made it a prologue. I mean, you need that backstory.
Yeah, and you can't skip.
You do need that backstory.
Yeah, and I'm like, I can't skip this prologue because it's an hour and a half long. So, I mean, clearly there's probably important information there. So, yeah, I'm like, okay, this is the very first strike against this book right from the because I absolutely loathe prologues.
I mean, I guess because of the time jump, that's why they called it a prologue.
Yeah. And that whole prologue was basically the backstory on her childhood, and then the chapter 1 kind of starts with her adult life.
Yeah, I think she's like 18 years old.
Yeah,
she's right at 18, I believe, and she has escaped from, once she got to a certain age, he just put her in circulation.
Right. His name is Duke, by the way.
Duke. Duke. Yes. But she has escaped. I think they were on the East Coast. I'm pretty sure New York or something.
Yes, I think they were in New York, and she was in California.
she's escaped to the West Coast. And when I say escaped, literally escaped. She like fled.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the first time she
It
tried.
took a long time to get from New York to California.
Yes. Yes. And her and 2 other women, I think, got passage on a ship, and her thought was to come out west and start over.
Right.
She didn't want to do this anymore.
Can I say that?
She just wanted to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
She didn't want to go back into prostitution. That wasn't
No. Her plan was to get to California and build a new life just by herself.
Yeah, and that's kind of what surprises me about some of the reviews in the books, because she clearly, I mean, it was very clear she did not want to go back into that lifestyle. She didn't enjoy it, yet some of the readers that gave it bad reviews were like, how dare you? Well, it would be one thing if she loved the line of work, and, but she didn't like it. So, yeah.
She's been traumatized.
Yeah, she was tired of it. And
how could you like that?
Yeah.
No one's gonna like
it. And when we see her again, she's clearly, she locks everything away, because that's how she's learned to deal with it.
Oh yeah. She's very hard.
She just doesn't show emotion.
Yeah.
She'll play
Yeah.
act when she needs to.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it. There's no softness to her. Every bit of softness has been, and that's understandable. I mean,
she's an empty shell of a person.
Oh, definitely.
She really is.
How could you not be?
Right.
You've
been used and abused.
You've had to like shut down emotionally.
Yeah.
To just survive.
None of this was her choice. She didn't choose this.
No,
she was sold into it unwittingly, but sold into it nonetheless. And
and then you also have the not only was she basically, this is what she's known all of her life. She hates the lifestyle, but she's afraid to get out of that lifestyle because that's all she knows. Yeah. So she's in a vicious cycle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because she has been pampered, because she's so incredibly beautiful. Mm-hmm. She's been sort of the belle of everything, and she's been pampered, silks and the best food, and the best clothes, all that sort of stuff. And
but that's all just happens when you're unhappy.
Oh, yeah. But she didn't know how to do anything. Mm-hmm. She didn't know how to take care of herself. She's been taken care of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were saying earlier, like, women just didn't have a plethora of jobs to pick from or occupations to pick from back then.
Yeah.
So that's
not like
occupation. That's all she knew how to do to make a living, so to speak. And I think it's important too, because you'd mentioned, in the beginning of the book, her name is Sarah, but when she gets sold to Duke, she does not tell him her name is Sarah. She keeps that to her. That's the one.
She keeps that. That is hers. That is always hers.
That is hers and no one else. No one knows that her name is Sarah from that point in her life on. And Duke said, that's okay. I'll just call you Angel. And so now her name is Angel.
Yeah. Yes.
I thought that was important.
Yeah. And that's, no, it is important. I'm glad you brought it up. I'm sorry I missed it. But by the time she gets to California, there's nothing, she's already had to entertain some of the sailors on the boat. Mm-hmm. She managed to hold out at least halfway through the voyage. But
and I think it mentioned something like she either did it willingly or they were going to, we're going to take it from one way or another.
Yeah.
Which, either way is still
horrible.
Coercion is still the same as unwilling.
Yes.
So, of course, by the time they get there, all the sailors on the boat know what she's done. So word spreads and, no one thinks anything more of her. Yeah. So what else?
The other two women beat her up and take her money.
Yeah. Yeah. They take her money. She has no money. She has no savings.
Right.
It's funny because my dad said last weekend, I forget the first part. The first part he said was about a man. But the second part, he said, there is nothing meaner than a mean woman.
This is
And he's
true.
absolutely right. You know, I'm not trying to insult my gender or whatever, but he's right. There is nothing meaner than a
Yes.
mean woman. It's a different, not that there's a good thing about a mean man,
No.
but it is a different kind of warfare with a woman.
Mm.
They will go for the jugular in many different ways. Now, these particular women also beat her up, but
Yeah.
you can, especially back then, a woman could torpedo any hopes you had of a social standing with one sentence. That's, I mean, just, there's nothing meaner than a mean woman. And these women were mean.
Yeah, and left her on there beaten up, and she probably was there for a couple of days before she was able to even get the ship.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remembered she was robbed. I couldn't remember who robbed her. So thank you for that. So then she winds up, you know, she's back to what choice does she have? She has no money.
Right.
To
stay.
No place to stay. So she goes back to the only thing she knows.
Mm-hmm.
And this time she's got a duchess to contend with. The woman, the person who owns the brothel is a woman this time.
Yeah.
And she goes by Duchess.
That's her name.
We don't really, do we ever learn their real names? I'm not sure we do. It's
No,
just
I don't think so.
Duchess,
Yeah.
I think.
Which I think adds to their inhumanity.
For sure. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So I think she's in California for a year before Michael sees her.
Yeah, maybe. Like that.
Is it about a year?
Yeah.
Could be.
She goes from a tent city to an actual building.
Yes.
They've got the building. They've got the
Mhm.
and she's back in silks and
Right.
I mean she's high demand.
Yeah.
Lots are being drawn. There's a minimum price to be met.
Yes.
And then Angel has to turn around and give 80% of her earnings to Duchess. And of course, Duchess
and
justifies
keeping
it.
the other 20%, by the way.
Yeah.
In her vault or whatever.
And of course, Duchess justifies it by saying, well, I'm going to keep 80% because I'm giving you the best foods. I'm giving you silks to wear. And of course, that's normal behavior in when you're doing sex work.
Yep. And so of course she's got her friends. We meet a few of the women. And a couple of them do seem to enjoy what they're doing.
I don't know. Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's resigned to it. They all deal with it in their own way. Her friend, the one that she's more friendly with, the lady that drinks a lot.
Yeah, Lucky.
Mm-hmm. They seem to have a little bit of a camaraderie.
Right.
And of course, there's the one that's jealous of Angel because she's the princess. But then Michael enters the picture, and Angel's life is never quite the same.
No, it is not.
Yeah.
Poor Michael just standing on a street corner, loading up his wagon.
Yeah.
And Angel just happens to walk by with the bodyguard at the brothel. She's walking somewhere and he's with her. Unfortunate, but also understandable. And he's not a nice guy.
Nope.
Either. But he sees her and immediately, just like everyone, just taken aback by how beautiful she is. And God tells him right there, that's the one.
Yep.
So he tries to find out more about her, and the store owner is telling him, "Say, well, you need a pretty penny to see her." And it's like, oh wait, what?
Yeah. Quickly finds out what she does for a living. Yeah.
You're joking, right, God? This is a joke.
Yeah. Can't be right.
But he does it several times and doesn't expect anything for the money. He just wants to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. He keeps going in there and talking, and she's just like, she's very uncomfortable with it because she's never had a man come in
and express
and
interest in her. in
Yeah,
that.
and refuse to use her.
Yes.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
She goes over in her head. There's the ones that are shy, and there are the ones that seem regretful afterwards and can't meet her eyes.
Right.
And then there's the ones that just okay.
Mm-hmm.
But this is different.
This is new.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and of course, in
So
the back of her mind, she's thinking, okay, what's your game here? What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
As everyone
she's
has an
trying to
ulterior
figure
motive
out.
in her life.
Yeah, trying to figure out what
Yes.
what's the plan? What is your motive? I don't
Yeah.
understand. No
Yeah.
one's ever played this game.
Right.
So she chases him off constantly. And he says, I want you to marry me. And she's like, you're nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one wants to marry me. And what would I do as a wife?
Right.
I don't know how to do anything. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
You're
and I'll
crazy.
say, as a male reader, I found it interesting because he went back, 3 or 4 times and was like,
Yes.
I don't want anything from you in the way that you're used to. But every time he went, he said, I want you to marry me. I want you to become my wife.
I'll take you out of here.
Yeah. And like, as a male reader, my thought is, okay, you hate the lifestyle you're in. Why would you not take him up on that? Why would you not jump at it?
Yeah.
And I'm like, is it because, like, what are your thoughts on that as females? Is it because in her mind, he's just a normal John?
Yes.
That's just going taking a different route to get what he wants.
Yes. I mean,
She's
the man like any other man she's ever encountered, and they all only ever use her and abuse her. Like, there's no way that she could trust a man at this point.
Yeah.
No, she doesn't. No.
Not even for an easy lifestyle.
Right.
No.
Well, she knows there's got to be a motive. There's something behind it that he's not.
She's waiting for the catch.
Okay.
She's waiting for the other shoe to drop. And she's had
on whatever it is you're trying to do here. Okay.
She's had
I thought that was strange. I was like, why not just take him up on it just for the fact
of
getting out of that situation, getting away from Duchess
and some of the other girls may have taken him up on it. I mean, they may not have had that kind of result that she had,
Yeah.
Not everybody has the same story, but and they've all been used. Hers is very deep-rooted, seated,
yes.
Yes.
The little girl.
Yes. And I think part of her continued refusals is that he makes her uncomfortable.
Yes.
It's not like he's any other.
Well, he's in a novel.
Yes.
He is not like any other man she has run across. And that makes her very uncomfortable. So I feel like if he had been, she's also heard, I want you to marry me before.
Yes.
She's heard
I
that.
love you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love you. I want you to marry me. All of it. She's heard it.
Yeah.
But he makes her uncomfortable and has from the first time he visited her because he won't touch her.
Yeah.
He wants to talk to her. He wants to know about her past. And she's like,
speaks to her gently
and with respect.
No, I'm not telling you anything about my past. You're insane.
Right.
So I think that's
they vault.
Yes.
I feel like if he had been someone that came 3 or 4 times and was doing what she expected him to do, maybe she might have finally said, yeah, sure. Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
I don't love you. I don't really care anything about you, but it gets me out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he wasn't. He was something new. And I think
it scared her.
Yeah.
Yeah. It scared her a little.
Yeah. Just the unknown of what his motives were. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And I think finally she gets him to like, okay, Lord, I've tried.
Yeah. He kind of pushes his buttons and he gets upset, gets mad.
He does get mad.
He does get mad. He does get mad. He has a temper. It takes a while to get to, but he does get mad. And I think he winds up going all the way home, which is a decent, it's what, 20 miles?
Yeah.
His cabin is 20 miles from the town, which is a decent
like a day and a half
amount of time.
When you're walking or riding a horse. Yeah, that's
when you're not in a car.
Yeah.
But he finally goes back, and when he does go back, it is well timed because she has gone to Duchess. She has demanded her money, and Duchess is like, well,
that's not happening.
that's not happening and you're being disrespectful. So we're going to teach you a lesson. And that's when she unleashes,
How do you
the
pronounce
bodyguard.
his name?
I can't remember.
Agawan?
I pronounced it in my mind. I pronounced it McGuigan.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Oh, it was totally off.
wait, let me find it.
I was like, I know I'm butchering this. In here somewhere.
I said McGuigan, but I don't think that's the name I'm thinking of in this book. Like I said, I've read 6 books between.
McGowan.
McGowan. Okay, we'll roll with that.
McGowan.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's been wanting to get his hands on her for a while because she's always been a little sassy. She takes him off.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he gets up there and she figures, well, you know what? I'm going to get out of this one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
So she starts pushing his buttons. It's an attempted do me in.
Yeah.
Do me in.
Yeah.
And he beats her pretty severely. Her
Probably
attempt almost
away from
succeeds.
Beth. Yeah.
Yes. Which wasn't what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to punish her.
Teach her a lesson, but not
Teach her a lesson.
severely.
And Duchess isn't too pleased with him.
Right. She can't
either.
work in
Yeah.
that condition.
Yeah. So by the time Michael gets there, she's in bed. She's hurt severely.
Yeah.
And
See, and this is just a great testament of God's timing, because the last time Michael left, he was angry. He was pretty much, you know what? I've tried. She's not doing it. I'm done with her. But then he goes back one more time, just when she needs him.
Yeah. Well, I think, didn't he have a dream? He had a dream about
I think so.
Maybe that's what it was.
And like she was in trouble, like she was like on a cliff and about to jump off.
Yeah.
And he just knew God was like, go get her now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, and that's just, God was instrumental in getting him back there, because
definitely.
Unfortunately it took her getting in a horrible situation.
Yes. Before she would leave with them.
Yes. Although I will say, even as a male reader, this kind of bothered me the way this was written. So I wonder what you guys think about it. I think this is the top part in the story that we're talking about. He basically marries her.
Yeah, they get married
while she's half unconscious.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, Francine Rivers.
But that was the only way to like get her out of there. And he put his mother's ring on her.
Yeah.
Yes.
But he was too much of a godly man to just take her and not be married to her.
Yes.
Like if he was going to take her home with him, they had to be married.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to be fair,
I get that, but it was just such a weird concept to me. That like, okay, while she's unconscious, we're going to put this ring on your finger and marry you.
Sure, why not?
Then you can't get out. Yeah, and that's exactly what she said. She was like, "Sure, why not? I'll marry you."
Not exactly the most romantic ceremony.
Yeah. We're not writing this moment in our marriage journal. Yeah, sure, why not? Get me out of here.
Yeah.
But
pushes her back to hell.
Yeah.
He does. He takes her back to the cabin, and then of course she finally comes to, and she's been there for a couple of days. And that's when she realizes, wait, what have I done? I'm married. She's looking at the ring on her finger, and she's just like, oh, what did I do?
Oh, great. Going to have to learn how to make stew.
Yeah.
Make biscuits.
Make biscuits.
But he's very patient with her. He nurses her back to health.
Yes.
And
she's not.
That's
grateful.
when.
No, she's
At
not.
first.
She's
She's
grateful
not
for
grateful.
nothing.
No, she's not grateful he got her out of there.
Hmm.
She's not grateful for his help. She's not grateful for the way he's taken care of her.
Yeah.
She's not grateful for
No, she's just very
anything.
Yeah.
Which,
Again, it's
you
the
know,
truth in her love.
Yeah.
she's like a wounded animal.
Oh,
She, don't
Good description.
come near me, don't touch me. And that's also one of the first things she says. She says, it'll be a while before I can perform my wifely duties.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I'm not worried about that. Not
Right.
worried. And again, that confuses her. She's like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
What I like about the author too is that she kind of also, we get a glimpse into Michael's mind, and he's like, God, I want her. Like, I'm attracted to her. I have this
Yeah.
is like this desire within me. I do want her in that way. But he knew he couldn't yet, you know.
Yes.
He had to
Yeah.
wait.
Yeah, and it's a good, because if he had tried to act on that too early,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it would have been catastrophic. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And you know, once she gets well,
wisdom.
Yes.
he does.
Some restraint. That
And
self-control to fruit of the spirit.
Yeah.
Very much so. Because he's, I mean,
He is a man.
we're pretty young.
Yeah,
He's
like 26.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah, mid-20s.
Mhm.
Yeah. Prime of your life.
Yeah.
So yeah, he has
And healthy
you know,
and
he has desires and needs just like any other man.
absolutely. Yeah. So she finally gets well, and that's when the lesson starts.
Yes.
Mhm.
Trying to build a fire and trying to make stew.
And getting used to wearing
Horrible.
simple cloth.
Yes.
Yes.
Sister
She's no
Tessa's
longer in
hand-me-down clothes.
Yeah.
She's horrible at it. She's absolutely horrible because she's never been taught. She doesn't know.
Never learned any kind
And
of skill other than that.
Yeah.
she gets so mad when she can't get it on the first try, and it actually amuses him how
Mhm.
mad she gets. I think that's a guy thing.
Yeah.
Guys get amused when we get mad. I don't understand it. I don't get that. What's up with that, Brett? Why do y'all get
wish I-
amused when we're angry?
I wish I knew.
I tell you what, my husband loves to push my buttons.
Well, that
That's
is-
the movement out of it. Why do you poke the bear? Why?
Why?
Not
Why?
well for you.
God built us the way we are.
Yeah.
And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
But what I love
And it
about
was-
Angel, though, is she's trying to do all this domesticated thing, is her grit and determination to want to learn how to do it, though. She wants to do it right.
Yeah.
Yes. She just gets very mad when she can't get it right.
Yeah.
And he
And I
has
totally
such an easy
identify
time.
with it, because I do too. If I like to nail things the first time, and when you don't, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
So I can get that.
Oh, yeah. We all can.
So he's very patient with her, and he shows her what to do, and she's doing a decent job at stuff. Wearing his sister's clothes, who had passed away on their passage out west. What was his sister's name? Was it Ruth?
Tess. Or Tessa.
Tess. Tessa?
Tessa,
Oh.
something like that. Yeah.
I was way off.
I think it's Tessa. And they may call her Tess.
But they're settling into some semblance of a sort of
A domestic routine.
Yeah.
partnership.
Because he works
Yeah.
out in the field. He
Yeah.
crops and all that. Yeah.
And then comes
Paul.
Paul.
Uh,
Paul.
which is his brother-in-law.
Yeah.
He was married to
Yes.
Tess.
Yes.
If there is an antagonist in the book, he is it.
I would
He
say.
is. And he's,
And Duke for sure. Yeah. Duchess. Yeah.
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 He's one of
He
them.
is.
Yeah.
He is interesting because he's an antagonist to Angel and to an extent Michael,
Yeah.
but he's also an antagonist to himself.
Yes.
Yes.
He is his own worst
Worst enemy.
enemy.
Yes, he is.
And I knew going in, because I'd seen some of the clips from the movie, I knew going in that this character showing up was
Mhm.
not going to be good.
Not going to be good.
Yeah.
He immediately,
Recognized
Clark.
her.
yeah, he knew her.
Yeah.
I don't believe he had ever visited her,
No.
but he
I'm
knew
just
her.
saying,
No,
if
couldn't
you-
afford her.
If you walk into a room and recognize a prostitute, you got to ask this,
Right? Well, and that's the thing. It's so
where have you been?
Well, yeah, it's so hypocritical.
Yeah.
So judgmental of her that, well, how is it that you even know that she is a prostitute?
Yeah.
Like, did
Yeah.
you visit
Yeah.
brothel yourself?
Exactly.
Because, yes,
Right.
he did.
Right.
Does not make you a bad person. Like it
Exactly.
takes two to tango.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Such a double standard.
And,
Yeah.
He immediately clocks her as using Michael,
Oh, yeah.
He gets to him to work.
to,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. It was
yeah.
a good idea.
Um,
She didn't want to go with them.
He dragged me in here while I was half unconscious.
Yeah.
And I woke up.
Yeah.
You seduced him, you did this, you did that, and
Oh,
she
yeah.
was like, he I didn't even want to come here. He brought me here. He's like, you're lying. And
he would say to convince him otherwise. I mean,
No.
he was so,
His
he
mind
had
was
his mind
made
made
up.
up. Yes.
he was dead set that she was determined to, she had her claws in Michael, and he couldn't see
ruin
what a horrible person she was, and, you know, all this stuff. And he's, you know, I get it. He's protective of his brother-in-law. I understand that. And at that period in time, there was nothing worse than, well, there were very few things worse than, you know, marrying a prostitute, a good upstanding man
Right.
marrying a prostitute. Like, you know,
I mean, that just
what's
didn't,
wrong with you?
that didn't happen.
Have you lost your mind?
Right.
Yeah.
So it just, things fall apart from there.
Yeah.
Which was never, up to that point, she was never in a place of, oh, I'm happy now, I'm good living here. She
wasn't.
She has always wanted to leave up to this point. She still wants to get out of there. She wants to leave.
Yes, she's
determined that she wants to go get her money from Duchess, build her own cabin, and live a solitary life by herself in her own little cabin alone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She's fairly content, but she's not happy.
Right. Well, she hasn't faced all her demons yet.
No.
They're still there.
They're still,
whispering in her ear.
She is still somewhat resentful of Michael.
Yeah.
She still doesn't understand him.
Well, she still doesn't to a certain degree.
She still doesn't trust him. So it doesn't take long for Paul to really whittle away what little
in that direction,
what little confidence she had built up.
Yeah, and I think she actually had tried to escape at least once prior to this, because she was just going to go on foot. You know, like I said, it's like a
she was just going to go on foot, and he was just like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah,
she was a mess, hot mess.
Even once she got there and was out of that mess, she still left several times. To go back to the life she hated.
Yes, over and over again.
Yeah, she didn't understand. She didn't.
No,
she didn't get it.
Yeah.
But Paul finally manages to convince her. You know, now's the time.
Well, she finally had a ticket back to paradise because she knew she couldn't walk on foot. She knew she was never going to get it. And so he needed to take the wagon into town to get supplies. That was her ticket.
Yeah.
That was her chance.
Yeah.
So she meets him on the road and says, take me back.
Yeah.
Take me back to paradise.
He's to get her out of Michael's life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I knew you would leave him. I knew this. I'm like, dude, you've been telling her to.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, I know.
Which is it? So they start out for paradise, and about halfway there, you know, I think the thing with Paul is he is just so full of pain and rage
and selfish pride,
but also a lot of pain from losing Tess, losing his wife, and clearly she was very young. They couldn't have been married very long,
right?
And he can't. Part of it is this woman that he knows has been sleeping with, you know, half the country, is wearing his wife's clothes.
Yes.
Married to his wife's brother.
Yep.
And it's just, it goes all over him. He can't stand it. And he's determined to, but he can't get to her. He can't make her mad.
Yeah. And that makes it even madder.
Infuriates him. Yeah. She's got such a shell around her that he can't penetrate it. And
and she knows how to get to him though. Like she knows how to an arrow straight to the heart of the matter.
Yeah. She's had 10 years of studying men to know what makes them tick. And she's read him like a book already. Yeah. It has not been difficult for her to get a handle on what is the worst of him.
Right.
I'm not going to say he's all bad. I think just at
I don't
this
think
point
he's
in
like,
his life, he is,
the worst man ever, even an evil person per se.
yeah,
But this is
yeah.
the type of man she's used to dealing with.
Yes. This she knows. This she understands.
Yes.
So they're not even halfway there, and he demands payment for the ride.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's like, well, I don't have, and
She pays the only way
No.
she can.
Yep.
she pays the only way she
The
can,
only
which
way
is
that-
exactly,
Mhm.
yeah, which is exactly what he intended,
Yep.
to debase her.
Mm-hmm.
But all he really succeeds in doing is, I mean, she doesn't feel great about it, but all he really succeeds in doing is making himself feel horrible.
Guilty.
Yeah.
Because
And she drives the
to
point.
Michael, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
He
He's like,
knows
you
Michael
just
loves
slept.
her. Like, there's no question about that. He
Yeah.
loves her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just slept with your brother-in-law's wife.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, while she was wearing your dead wife's dress, let's drive the point home a little more.
Yeah.
True.
But just
So-
kind of events that I think he immediately read it, and she did too. I don't know that. I feel like she poked at him, which maybe prompted that. I don't know that that would have happened if she would have just kept her mouth shut. I don't know. But she threw a barb at him that I think prompted it.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
and in a way, I think they were both to blame for it. But,
Yeah.
and they were both willing parties in it. But
Yeah.
both, I think, regretted it immediately afterwards.
Yeah. But I don't know that wasn't what she was almost going for.
Yeah, I think
Just to show him,
to twist
you're no better than all the other men I've met,
Mm-hmm.
except for Michael.
Yeah. Yeah.
Michael's been the only decent man she's met in years.
Yeah.
What
And
makes
that's her
you,
only form of currency, but also her only form of retaliation, her only form of like revenge. Like, you've hurt me, this is how I hurt you back.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I may be selling myself.
Yeah.
But what's that say about you? You just,
Yep. Yeah.
you
What
just bought me.
got you?
Now you're on my level.
Yep. You're no better
So-
than me. Mm-hmm.
Thanks for joining us on the Bookish Introverts podcast, where together we explore the worlds within the pages. Until next time, stay bookish.